You are lying awake at 2 a.m. doing mental math, rent, car payment, that credit card balance you've been strategically ignoring. You add it up, and then you add it up again, hoping the numbers will somehow change. They don't, and somewhere between the third calculation and the sunrise, this thought creeps in. Everyone else has their shit together. Why can't I? You scroll Instagram the next morning. Your college roommate just bought a house. Your cousin is in Bali for the third time this year. Some guy you barely remember from high school is posting photos of his Tesla. And you are sitting there with $847 in your checking account, wondering if you can afford both groceries and gas this week. Here is the thing. That feeling you have, that constant gnawing sense that you're financially behind, that you missed some invisible memo everyone else got. That feeling is not a character flaw. It is not because you're lazy. It is not because you're stupid. And it is definitely not because you just don't understand money. It is because the game was rigged before you even learned the rules. My name is Paw, and I spent years feeling exactly like you do right now, convinced I was somehow fundamentally broken when it came to money. Turns out, I wasn't broken. I was just operating on corrupted software that was installed in my brain before I could even spell the word budget. If you want to understand why you feel stuck, and more importantly, how to actually get unstuck, stay with me. Because what I'm about to walk you through changed everything for me. Let's start with the foundation. The first layer of why you feel financially screwed. And this one is uncomfortable because it requires you to look backward before you can move forward. I call it your money programming. And no, I'm not talking about some woo-woo manifestation garbage. I'm talking about the very real, very measurable ways your childhood experiences literally rewired your brain's relationship with money. Here is what I mean. My mom used to buy napkins from Costco and cut them in half with scissors. Not because we were destitute, because in her mind, that is what you did. You stretched everything, you optimized everything. You acted like every dollar might be your last, because for a long time it almost was. She carried an envelope of coupons everywhere. She de-spent 20 minutes at the checkout counter, sorting through them. And as a kid, I absorbed all of it, not consciously. I didn't sit there thinking, ah yes, I shall now develop a scarcity mindset. I just watched, I internalized. And by the time I was an adult, I had this constant, low-grade financial anxiety humming in the background of every decision I made. Even now, even after building real financial stability, there is still this voice that whispers, sure, things are fine today, but don't get comfortable, the other shoe is about to drop. That is not logic. That is programming. And here's the thing nobody tells you, you can't outwork bad programming. You can make 6 figures and still feel broke. You can have a full emergency fund and still panic when unexpected bills show up. Because the problem isn't your bank account. The problem is the software running your decisions. There are a few common types of this corrupted money programming, and I'd bet everything you recognize yourself in at least one. First, there is scarcity programming. That is mine. You grew up watching money being stretched, whispered about intense conversations you weren't supposed to hear. Now, even when you have money, you can't enjoy it. You hoard it anxiously, or you spend it impulsively because, well, it is going to disappear anyway, right? Then there is avoidance programming. This is where you watched money because so much pain, so much conflict, so much stress in your household that you subconsciously decided money itself was the enemy. So now you avoid it, you don't check your bank account, you don't open those statements. You'd rather not know than face the anxiety of knowing. And finally, there is worship programming. This is where money was treated as the answer to everything. Your parents fought about it constantly. Happiness was always just one raise away, one bonus away, one lucky breakaway. So now you chase money obsessively, convinced that enough of it will finally fill that hole inside you. Spoiler alert, it won't. Here is the uncomfortable truth. Every single one of these programs is running in your subconscious right now, influencing decisions you don't even realize you're making. You're not choosing to feel anxious about money. You're not choosing to avoid your finances. You're not choosing to worship your paycheck. You're just running the code that was installed before you had any say in the matter. And that code is sabotaging you. But here's where it gets worse, because your internal programming isn't the only thing messing with you. Layer 2 is external, and it is even more insidious. I want you to think about something. Humans evolved in small groups, tribes, villages. For hundreds of thousands of years, your brain developed a comparison mechanism that was actually useful. You looked around at the 150 or so people in your community, you compared yourself to them, and you figured out where you stood. Am I keeping up? Am I falling behind? Am I providing for my family as well as the blacksmith next door? This comparison instinct served us well for most of human history. The problem is, your brain didn't get the memo that the world changed. Because now, right now, instead of comparing yourself to 150 people in your village, you are comparing yourself to 150 highly curated highlight reels from the top 1% of the planet. You wake up and check Instagram. There is a 24-year-old entrepreneur posing in front of a Lamborghini. You don't know that he rented it for 4 hours for that photo shoot. Your brain doesn't care. It just files him under peer and starts the comparison process. You see your old classmate posting about her new house, her new car, her new life. You don't see the $400,000 mortgage she can barely afford. You don't see the credit card debt behind that vacation photo. You just see the highlight reel, and your ancient monkey brain goes, damn, I'm falling behind. This isn't just making you feel bad. It is making you make terrible financial decisions. Over half of Americans admit to buying things specifically because they saw someone else's social media post about their lifestyle. Half. That is not a coincidence. That is a coordinated, algorithm-optimized attack on your financial well-being. And you don't even realize it is happening. You scroll, you absorb, you internalize. That influencer wears a Rolex. Subconsciously, your brain starts linking Rolex with success. That entrepreneur drives a Tesla. Tesla must equal making it. And slowly, quietly, your purchasing decisions get hijacked by people who have completely different financial realities than you. You're comparing your behind the scenes to everyone else's highlight reel. And then you're trying to fake your own highlight reel to keep up, going into debt in the process. It is a damn hamster wheel, and the wheel is designed to keep you running forever. But here's where I need you to really pay attention, because this is the layer that nobody wants to talk about. The layer that financial gurus conveniently skip over, because it doesn't fit their just hustle harder narrative. Layer 3, the system itself, is broken. And no, I'm not saying this to give you an excuse. I'm saying it because it is true, and pretending it isn't won't help you navigate it. Let me show you what I mean with some numbers, because numbers don't lie even when everyone else does. In 1980, the median age when Americans bought their first house was 29 years old. They got married in their early 20s, had kids shortly after, and retired by 57. That was the normal American life path. Fast forward to today, the median age for buying a first home is now 38. That is nearly a decade later. Marriage age has pushed to the early 30s. Retirement, forget 57, try 64. If you are lucky. And here's the part that should make you angry. Since 1973, American worker productivity has increased by 64.6%. You know what that means. It means workers are producing significantly more value than they did 50 years ago. They're working harder, smarter, longer hours. But wages have only increased by 17.3% in that same period when adjusted for inflation. Let that sink in. You're working 65% harder. You're being paid barely 17% more. The rest of that value, it went straight to the top. The wealthiest 1% have seen their income grow by over 138% since 1979. Meanwhile, the bottom 90%, less than 15%. The pie got bigger, your slice got smaller. And then they have the audacity to tell you that you just need to budget better and skip the lattes. This is why hitting normal financial milestones feels impossible. It is not because you're failing. It is because the goalposts moved. They moved significantly, and nobody bothered to tell you while they were busy selling you on the American dream that no longer exists. Your parents could buy a house on a single income. You can barely afford rent on 2 incomes. That is not a personal failure. That is a systemic one. But here's where I want to shift, because understanding why you're stuck is only half the battle. The real question is, what the hell do we do about it? Look, I'm not going to pretend I have a magic solution that erases generational wealth inequality or fixes housing prices overnight. I don't. Nobody does. But I do have 2 strategies that actually helped me stop feeling like I was drowning. And unlike most financial advice, these don't require you to magically make more money first. Strategy number 1. I call it the evidence jar. Here's the problem. Your brain is a negativity magnet. It remembers every financial mistake you've made, every overdraft, every stupid purchase, every time you checked your bank account and felt that pit in your stomach, but it conveniently forgets the wins. So we're going to force it to remember. Get a jar, a physical one, or just a folder in your notes app. Every single time you make a financial decision that moves you in the right direction, no matter how small, you write it down and you put it in the jar. Negotiated $15 off your internet bill. Write it down. Cooked dinner instead of ordering DoorDash. Write it down. Said no to that $200 concert ticket you could. T'd afford. Write it down. These aren't small things. These are evidence. Evidence that you're not actually bad with money. Evidence that you can make good financial decisions when you're conscious about it. Evidence against that internal programming telling you you're a financial disaster. And here's the key. Next time you're spiraling at 2 a.m., next time that voice is telling you you'll never catch up, you pull something out of that jar. You read it, you remind yourself that the voice is lying because you have proof. This isn't positive thinking garbage. This is documented evidence against your own sabotaging brain. Use it. Strategy number 2. This one takes more time, but it is the one that actually rewires your money programming. You're going to identify, extract, and reframe your money stories. Step 1, identify. I want you to write down specific memories from your childhood involving money, not vague feelings, specific scenes, specific moments. My mom cutting napkins in half, watching my parents fight about bills at the kitchen table, the feeling of wearing clothes that were deliberately too big because you'll grow into them, those exact memories. For each one, answer, who was there? What happened? When and where? Why did it happen? And most importantly, how did it make you feel? Step 2, extract. This is where you connect the dots. You ask yourself, what belief about money did this experience install in me? When I watched my mom cut napkins in half, what got installed was money is scarce. Every dollar must be stretched. Waste is dangerous. One wrong purchase could ruin everything. And that programming is why, even today, I will spend 2 hours researching a $20 purchase. It is why I feel genuine anxiety when I buy something and later find it $3 cheaper elsewhere. The behavior is irrational. The programming isn't. It makes perfect sense given what I absorbed as a kid. Step 3. Reframe here is where you rewrite the story. Not with delusional affirmations, not with I am a money magnet nonsense. With a reframe that acknowledges the original experience while redirecting its meaning. My reframe, growing up, I learned to be strategic and intentional with every dollar. That hyper-awareness made me excellent at tracking my money, researching purchases, and avoiding debt. I don't live in scarcity anymore, but those skills still serve me. See what happened? The programming didn't disappear, I just redirected it. Instead of money is scary and I'll never have enough, it became I'm strategic with money because I was trained to be. And that is actually useful. Your reframe will be different, it has to be yours, but the process is the same. You're not erasing your past, you're choosing a new interpretation of it that doesn't hold you hostage anymore. Let me be clear about something, none of this is going to fix the broken system. The housing market is still insane. Wages are still stagnant. The wealth gap is still growing, but you can't change any of that from a position of paralysis. You can't build wealth while you're too overwhelmed to look at your bank account. You can't advocate for systemic change while you're drowning in shame about your own finances. You have to put on your own oxygen mask first. And here's the truth that nobody wants to say out loud. There is no timeline for financial success. There is no universal scoreboard keeping track of who bought a house at 28 and who is still renting at 35. There is no prize for hitting arbitrary milestones that were designed for an economy that doesn't exist anymore. There is just you. There is just your life. There is just today and the decisions you make from this point forward. You're not behind. The race itself is bullshit. The finish line keeps moving. The trophy doesn't exist. Stop comparing your chapter 2 to someone else. As chapter 20. Stop measuring yourself against people whose finances you don't actually know. Stop letting corrupted childhood programming run your adult decisions. And for the love of everything, stop letting the algorithm convince you that you need to look wealthy instead of actually building wealth. Fix your programming, build your evidence, and start playing a different game entirely. One where you decide what winning looks like